So one of the things I've done is added head bob for the movement of the helmet to the game. Let me just turn the natural environment down a bit. I'll just walk away from the noisy water. So what I want to demonstrate here in the video is if you look at the helmet which is framing our view, you can see it's moving as I move the mouse, particularly if I just move from left to right like this. You can see it takes a while for it to catch up, just a small lag. And the same if I move up and down, there's just a small lag. And I think I like it. It does seem to, I don't know if it's entirely smooth. It might need a bit of looking into or refining, but particularly if you wiggle like that, you can see there's a bit of a damped kind of movement. I think it adds a bit of a sense of you're in something, looking out through the window of your spacesuit. That's the intention. So that's enough to demonstrate what it is, and then just a quick run of the code. So the update method for the player controller, I've added to the what happens, this method at the end called do helmet bob, and it's not particularly big, and it calls out to this other method here, and the main input for it comes from the do input method where we get mouse movement. So this is obviously already in the game. We get the forward and back walking movement from the keyboard, and the mouse movement is for turning, and we get our mouse velocity from the X and Y axis. We store that in a vector2, and then also store the mouse direction corresponding to the range here. I've measured the range that you get from these axes, and it tends to be around 0 to plus or minus 20. For me, I don't know if it might be a bit different depending on what kind of mouse you've got. Like a gaming mouse maybe has different range. I need to look into that, but for now with my kit, this is what works, and these are the kind of numbers that I'm getting. So rather than storing like minus 15, so I'll be storing that, but I'm also then just storing minus 1 or 1 against the horizontal and the vertical movement as my indication of the direction of the movement. I'm doing that because I want to work mainly with the magnitude of the acceleration of the mouse and the deceleration. So acceleration and deceleration, I'll need positive and negative to indicate deceleration. So I need to store the mouse direction separately. So is the sign. So I need that separate. So mouse acceleration. This is a vector2 that I'm using, and acceleration is velocity over time. So if I take my mouse velocity or the absolute value of it, so regardless of whether it's left or right or up and down, and if I deduct the previous the velocity from the previous frame, and then divide that by the delta between the two frames, then I'm getting my mouse acceleration. So that ranges, in my measurements, that ranges between 0 for no movement of the mouse to plus or minus 7,000 if I'm wiggling my mouse crazily fast. Again, that could be different maybe for different hardware. So that's fine. Then I'm going to use that in the bit later on. So that's where I'm getting my inputs from the mouse. Then in the helmet bob, in essence, I want to change that acceleration to a offset. So I want to rotate the helmet slightly in the opposite direction to the direction of movement. So as you turn to the right, I want the helmet to be slightly offset, just a few degrees to the left. And again, if you turn your head to the left, I want the helmet to be offset slightly to the right by a few degrees. And then when your head comes to, when the head becomes stationary again, I want the helmet to catch up. So that's the idea. So I take the mouse acceleration, feed it into my little method for mapping the acceleration to a offset in degrees, and it's super simple. I did try some things using like the square or the cube of, and I was thinking of using an exponential or logarithmic relationship, but in the end it just turned out a linear proportional relationship to the acceleration looked fine, and it's not heavily computational, so I've just gone with that. That maybe would change in the future. So 10, 500. I've hard coded all the numbers into here because I was just doing it in a hurry last night. I really should break these out and make them variables that you can, inputs to the class. Maybe I'll get around to doing that, but it's a very minor piece of the game that for now it's I just want to crack on with other things. So why those magic numbers of 10 and 500? That's 10 degrees of movement, and this is I'm, as you'll see in a second, I'm clamping my mouse movement, my mouse acceleration between 0 and 500 at most. So I think I said earlier on I had measured that it went up to 7,000 in some cases if I wiggled my mouse super fast. That's more than ample. So I'm just going to say anything above 500 means you're turning your head very fast, and therefore use the maximum number of degrees of offset, which I've decided 10 degrees looks quite nice. So clamp any acceleration of the mouse to a maximum of 500, and then 10 degrees divided by the maximum 500 gives us a mapping that we then are proportional to with the actual acceleration of the mouse in this frame. So here we go. We're in the frame. We get the mouse acceleration in the horizontal direction. We check, are we accelerating or is it stationary? If we are accelerating, then we come in here and we clamp it to make sure it's not above 500. Then we get the magnitude using the method we just looked at, which gives us something between 0 and 10 degrees. But it doesn't say whether it's to the left or the right, so we then store the offset direction that we're going to apply this in another vector 2 here, and we base it on the mouse direction vector which we captured in our input earlier on, which will be -1 or 1 depending, and I've just used a minus sign here for whether it's left or right. It's just empirically that's the way it needed to be. So if we're not accelerating, in all other circumstances where we're not accelerating the mouse, so the mouse is decelerating or come to a complete stationary stop and we're just looking straight ahead again, we want the helmet to catch up. So the helmet offset needs to reduce slowly, so we've just said, okay, the helmet magnitude, the offset magnitude is now 0, so it's restored. And then we just do the exact same thing. This block is it's identical, but just for Y. So the movement of the mouse up and down and the helmet lag movement up and down, exactly the same. And then we're clamping the movement here between 0 and 10. Actually, that's in this case it doesn't apply because I've capped it at 510 in this method here anyway. But at the time when I wrote that there, this method was full of squares and logarithms and stuff. But either way, it's not really doing much computation there, so it's fairly harmless. So that's worked out the magnitude. that's actually going to be applied. Now we actually need to apply it then. So we're going to say our horizontal angle is the magnitude in degrees times the direction, left or right, and the magnitude in the vertical times the direction up or down. And then we're going to apply that by making a quaternion based on the quaternion of the helmet at rest, which we've recorded in the awake method up here somewhere, resting helmet, which it just reads as its current rotation. And we say, okay, given that, move from that quaternion to this new one by multiplying them together, and then that is our new helmet position. So we want to slurp or gradually change, linearly interpolate between where the helmet currently is in this at the start of this frame to this new position, and do it over a delta time, so it's frame rate independent. And I've actually sped it up by a factor of 30. Again, a naughty hard-coded value in there. Again, all these numbers should be broken out and put as inputs to the class that you can change, maybe with sliders or whatever, to be done a bit more properly. But anyway, that's what's that's behind the scenes, how I've gone about it. So seems to be working. You know, it's only a very minor part of the game, so I'm going to crack on and do the other stuff now. End of video.